Hello and welcome back to this next video in my game dev series. In this video I'd like to look at quickly adding a font to my game. So if we look back at the game here, I had mentioned in the previous video that we have the health bars, and below that I would like to be able to show some stats. So that would be the defense, speed, and luck. Now I'd like to have a little font to do that. I think this main font that I'm using down below is a little bit too large for the purposes there. So if we go to dafont.com, which is a site that I've gone to just tons in the past, I searched for basically public domain and free for personal use fonts. And I have found this one, which is called half-80s. So I downloaded the TTF file and I've simply put that in my source folder so I can kind of keep track of that. Now what I'd like to do is we will pull up this runnable Hyro jar program. And what that is going to do is allow me to load up that TrueType font in this tool. And this allows me to do a couple things. You can change the rendering first off. And if you change it to the Java rendering, you can do a bunch of different effects. So you can do different colors, gradients, outlines, blah, blah, blah. You can add padding to all the characters. I'm going to keep it in the free type rendering, I think. Yeah, because that works pretty well for me. Now what I'd like to do is change it to a glyph cache. Now I can size this down. Since my font is actually going to be fairly small, there's not a big difference between 15 up to 17, just a little bit of spacing in between. So we'll put it at 15. We'll change the page width to 64 and the page height to 64. I'll do width 128. It doesn't ultimately matter, but I would like to get it down to one page, since then I don't have to account for paging in my code. So this looks good. This will be the ultimate image that is rendered for us. So if I save this in BM font files, this is called again half-80s.font. Let's not put a hyphen in there. So if we save that, we can close this tool now. And if we go into Tools, Fonts, refresh this, we'll see we now have a BM font file, which is a definition of all the various glyphs that you'll find in that image. And that image also should have gotten generated here. This half-80s PNG. So what I'm going to do is copy that half-80s PNG into my fonts folder inside assets. And the one manual process I'm going to do here is change the name. We'll tell it what size the font is as well as what color. So that is half-80s 15 white. Now the second thing that I need to do is convert from this BM font format into a static C++ header. And you can see a few of those if I load up the fonts folder. This is what that header looks like. In my intro to the code, I showed kind of what that is like here. What I can do there is in the past I created a PHP function or a script what was that called? Tools, fonts, so font to CPP. That takes a couple arguments. So first of all, we need to pass in the BM font file, which is 1/280s.fnt. And then secondarily, it will tell you that it needs a color. So in this case, it is white. Now, assuming all went well, it will both dump the contents of that generated header out to the console, as well as write that new file into my fonts folder there. So this is what we get, and that looks about what I'm going for. So I do not see any problems with that, which means my script was successful. In fact, at this point we could even get rid of that 1/280s font file. There's really no reason to retain that at this point. I'll delete this unispace one too. Now, to actually implement this font, we need to first of all include this header, and that gets included into font.cpp. There's that. And then secondarily, since we can set the state of the font, or basically the state of the text writer, we need to copy 1/280s. Make sure I spell that correctly. We need to essentially copy the logic here, but give it the correct namespace to get the glyphs, the lettering, and font size from. That should be all we need to do in this file. And then text writer, nothing needs to be done there. We should just be able to use our new font now. So in our display health bar function, between videos here I had changed this slightly so that I am passing in the battle stats struct into this function instead of just the health. And that allows me to pull out each of those stats so I can render them down below the health bar. So here I'm passing the stats from the player as well as from the enemy. I'm going to copy this text writing code here quickly just so I can use that to mock out the text writing within our health bar function here. So the font itself is going to be 1/280s. And the text that we want to display will be the DSL text. All right, so D is going to be standard to string stats dot defense, and then we want a new line. S is stats.speed, new line, L was luck, so that's stats.luck. Now something else we need to do here is adjust our X and Y positions. So Y, we're going to keep it at, let's see, Y. how do we want to set that? That's the Y position of the text cursor. So that's where it begins drawing on the screen. So how tall is our health bar right now? Let's do position.y plus 2. Oh, wait, sorry. Position.y plus position.height plus 2. So that'll move it down 2 pixels beneath the health bar. And for our Y position, we can do position, or for X position, sorry, we can do position.x. So that'll keep it to basically the left side of the health bar. And I think that'll work just fine. We set a relative position for the writer, don't worry about that. One thing we need to do here is set the, I need to remember what it is called. There should be a container. I thought that was in the writer. Yeah, writer container x equals position.x. What that is saying is the text is theoretically supposed to be drawn within a certain box on the screen. If you do not set container x, basically that box becomes the left side of the window itself. So that would be a full screen width of a bounding box. So instead we want to have the bounding box left side be in the same position as where we are drawing the left side of the health bar, if that makes sense. And so we can just write the text and that should do what we want it to, unless we've missed something here. Oh, yep, we did. Let me cancel out of that. The last thing that we actually need to do is load in that font file into our textures, or into our asset manager texture map. So that here, I was testing things out before and I added that in. So we can, I think, continue that compile. Everything should fall into place just fine. Yes, there we go. Now you see the damage, speed, and luck of either actor there. I think for testing purposes that should work out pretty well. One last thing I wanted to look at here was when we were positioning the health bars for the player and the enemy, I was doing some kind of wonky positioning, if you recall. I think we probably don't need to do that so much. If I leverage the position of the player and the enemy, we know that the X position of the player is set in a specific place. So we should be able to tell our health bar that we want its X position to be the width of the health bar minus tile size, right? Because tile size is how much space the player takes up. And then height. For that, again, we can leverage the position of the player, so we can do, hold on, I didn't actually leverage the X position here, so position dot X minus width minus tile size. I think that should do it. So X minus the width of the health bar minus the width of the player. So Y is going to be position dot Y. So that'll basically put it right at the top of the player's head, I believe. We'll try that. And we can do more or less the same thing here for the enemy. So that'll be position.x, but in this case it's plus tile size. And that should be all we have to do there, because the X is going to be the top left of the enemy. So we want to go one tile over, so that'll basically go to the right side of the enemy, and then you want to basically start drawing the health bar right there. I think that should clean things up a little bit, assuming I have that correct in my mind and now in the code. Yes, that is more or less what I'm going for. The player one is off a little bit, and I think I know why. X minus width. I don't know if we need to do this minus tile size here, because like I was saying with the enemy, the X value is already at the top left of the sprite container there. So we only need to take off the width of the health bar. Build that once more. We'll see, that should line up where I want it. Yep, right at the side of his head. So that's all right. I think I'm okay keeping it right there for now, because the important thing is that I get to see a health bar and I get to see the stats that get generated. All right, well, I think I will keep this one relatively short. For the next video, I think we should look at randomly generating some of these enemy statistics within certain bounds, and then probably getting some basic battle UI going. So being able to select an attack, being able to indicate how much damage was done to both the opponent and to the player, and then probably some way to gracefully end the battle and put you back into the map. And then starting over that countdown timer until the next battle. So if you've made it to this point, I thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.